Hey everybody, I'm making this video because I've had lots of friends and family who are asking me to support Jeremy Corbyn and vote for Labour, and and some of them are quite upset with me because I've refused to support Jeremy Corbyn, and I've actually asked people not to vote for Labour, and so. And they are good friends, and my family, and I've explained to them, and I'm sharing this explanation now because I think it's important. And I know I'm just a nobody, but I think my experiences and my life, I think they're valuable for people. It's valuable things to think about, and I'm not bigging myself up or trying to sell anybody anything. I am genuinely concerned for everybody's well-being, and I don't care whether you're rich, poor, what gender you are, how old you are. To me, everybody is important, and it's that's at the heart of that makes me want to share these things, because I know the way the world works, and I know because I was trapped in those visions for a long time because I had nothing else to tell me any different, you see. So, I just had my feeling that was telling me that things were seriously wrong. And I knew things were seriously wrong, and especially with the Labour Party when Thatcher came into power, you know. And, I mean, I'll go into her in a bit. But first of all, looking at Jeremy Corbyn as a person, I've got absolutely nothing against him. I don't think he's evil or anything like that. I think he's a good man who genuinely cares, and he believes what he's doing is the best way. Like getting into the system to change the system. That's the way his consciousness is operating. It's how Tony Benn proceeded, and I had every respect for Tony Benn, God rest his soul, and also Dennis Skinner, who, unquestionable support for him. And so it isn't that I don't like them as human beings, or that I'm criticising them personally. But as far as there being a part of a political party that has been a traitor to the British people, it's like New Labour, isn't it? All over again, except it's, what's this one? Old New Labour, New Old Labour. I don't know. But it's a different type of Labour to the Tony Blair Labour, isn't it? So it's like Labour's took a step back kind of thing, and now Corbyn wants to renationalise the railways. Well, of course he wants to renationalise the railways. Who wouldn't want to renationalise the railways? It was always going to be a complete disaster right from the start, wasn't it? Privatising a public service like our railways. And because it's just this very idea that global corporations should be allowed to run national services and transport for people, and even their little local industries. Because, why can't a nation of people provide its own public transport and have its own bus? Why do we have to have a bus service that's run by a global corporation? You see, and as it turns out, all the privatised services and transport systems do actually cost the government a lot more money now than they did before they were privatised. And not only is it costing our government a lot more money in subsidies that they pay to these corporations, it's also costing the British public a lot more money to actually use the services that these private corporations provide. And often the services are very much more diminished, especially when it comes to care for disabled people. So there is a lot of evidence to show that, you know, that privatisation is actually causing more problems than it is solving. And the reason for this is because, you know, the whole system that we're living in now is an antiquated system. It's like a clockwork mechanism that's been digitalised and now runs on nuclear power. Okay? So we've got this consciousness and we've got these sets of wheels, and each wheel is a different world. So we've got the banking world, we've got the political world, the financial world, the labour force world, the children's world, the court world, the police world, the government world, and they all sort of work together somehow, supporting each other, but the whole structure itself is designed fundamentally to funnel resources from the bottom, so they pour out in this big, massive, huge waterfall to the 1% at the top. And it seems to me that the only difference between Labour and Conservatives, which is, you know, your extreme right and your extreme left, as far as it can go within that structure, because, you know, we know things can go a lot more left or a lot more right. But at the end of the day, we need to understand that the left and the right are merely separate hands on two sides of the same machinery, and ultimately their objective is for control and power and wealth to do what they want to do, you see. And so therefore, you know, we have to assume that this whole structure is designed to empower whoever it is gets control of the machinery ultimately, and that those people that do get control of it are there by order of some higher being. What, by God? They're superior because we trust them to govern our world, look at what technology we're going to have, how we're going to live, what jobs we're going to do, what we're going to produce. They're going to decide it all, and we're all going to accept that, you see. And so, you know, having watched what's happened from Thatcher, to me, I called all the Labour, I mean, it was Neil Kinnock that finally did it, that I just realised that, you know, he isn't supporting British people. He wasn't addressing the very serious issues of what Thatcher was doing, because she fundamentally attacked our society and she removed the cornerstone of our welfare state, which was obviously our nationalised industries and services. So, you know, Jeremy Corbyn, he wants to do all kinds of things, you know. He's created a shadow mental health role, and I do support all his initiatives, but like I say, to me, I've called the Labour Party the party of Mr. and Mrs. Wishy-Washes, because they're very wishy-washy, you know. And I've read about how Corbyn has spoken out about various things, and, you know, he's speaking out against Trident. Well, we heard it all with Neil Kinnock, you know, Trident. Who cares about Trident, really? Now, what has Trident got to do with anything at the moment that's going on? I didn't hear him speak out very strongly, if at all, about what was happening in Israel when Israel was bombing Gaza recently. And we had people in Parliament, perhaps Jeremy's voice was among them, asking questions, and we had David Cameron and other of his MPs standing up supporting Israel's right to defend itself. And now we find out that actually at that time Israel was bombing Palestine, Gaza, a non-nuclear power, with enriched uranium. That's what the European Radiation Nuclear Council have recently publicly published in their report. But nobody in Parliament has said anything at all about that. So we get our Prime Minister can stand up and say, you know, he supports Israel's right to defend itself by mercilessly bombing Gaza. But then, absolute silence about the fact that they used enriched uranium. And then we've got our so-called opposition. All they're going on about is Trident. You see. And, you know, and then we find out that Jeremy Corbyn's promoting this Israel supporter Fabian Hamilton to the junior shadow foreign role. And it says in this article that Fabian Hamilton has previously been highly critical of his party's approach to Israel, accusing former leader Ed Miliband of betraying Israel with his position on the 2014 Gaza conflict. So, what, you know, but there again, my other problem with Labour, and this isn't with Corbyn, but he is a member of the Fabian Society because every Labour leader is. And I do advise people, I'll leave all the links to, as usual, below this video. Have a look at the Fabian Society. This window was designed by George Bernard Shaw, and the shield depicts a wolf in sheepskin. A wolf wearing sheepskin. Okay, and that is their symbol. And that is what they're all about. You know, they are about taking control surreptitiously. And, you know, they've taken control of the Labour Party since it first emerged. And they do essentially have the same ideals as the far right, because as I say, they're both serving the one body of machinery. So no matter what you do, what they do, nothing is going to change. Nothing is going to change. And, you know, Jeremy Corbyn says that he wants to stop austerity. And it's like, well, you know, he is never going to stop austerity because the whole system that he is supporting, because he is taking part in it, that he thinks he can change it from within, but he can't, is basically, it's the same system that has ignored the fact that thousands of Palestinian people are now going to die from the results of enriched uranium, including children, you know, as if not enough had already died in that terrible, merciless assault that Israel inflicted on them. And, but again, who's bothered about a few Palestinians? At the end of the day, they're a poor country, aren't they? They haven't got connections to the World Bank. They haven't even got a nuclear weapon. So don't need to think about them, do we? And we see the same attitude in Britain of this consciousness, the machinery, the clockwork consciousness, the antiquated consciousness. We see it operating in Britain, where, you know, one economic policy, a cruel economic policy, kills 10,000 people within weeks of cuts to disability and sickness benefits and benefits for the unemployed. 10,000 people dead in the first 6 weeks, apparently. Or 6 months, it might have been. But either way, it doesn't make any difference, does it? Apparently, those 10,000 people, well, what were they? They were scroungers. The press told us very clearly. They were scroungers. And then, at the time that was happening, and I was very upset about it, and I was addressing it and talking to a lot of people about it, And a lot of comments were made. And I remember people who own shops, small businesses, who work for certain companies and businesses, and they were saying, yeah, well, it's got to go, Auntie. A lot of them are fraudulently claiming and blah, blah, blah. And then it turned out that only 0.05% of claims were proven false. But what none of those people realised is that when the people when you've got a proper benefit system in place, and so you've got all those people that were receiving benefits, and the ones that didn't die suffered a 30% cut. Everybody on benefits has suffered a 30% cut in their benefits, in their state paid benefits. That's what has happened. And so that means less money going out into the community, because all the people on benefits, the sick, the disabled, the unemployed, the people on income support, they largely spend the bulk of their income within their local economic system. So when you take 30% of people's income, then you're taking that income out of the local economy. Oh, next minute, shops are closing down. Small businesses are closing down. Other businesses are closing down that people were working in. And a lot of these people that were complaining about the benefit system are now losing their jobs as a direct result, because the shops they worked in have closed, the shop that they owned they've had to close, the business they were working for has closed because of the recession. So basically, their businesses were supporting scroungers, and now we've took the money off the scroungers. Now the businesses are going, but we can apply that same thinking to the businesses, can't we? Because we can say, oh well, you were only a scrounger business operating on a scrounger council estate, or you were only a scrounger business because now we've took money off these poor people, you can't operate. So who were you serving really? You were only serving poor people, so you can go as well, because we don't want you, we don't want these poor people. And we cannot forget the Fabian Society does support the idea of a human call, and only the fittest of the fittest shall survive, and all this kind of stuff is at the core of it. And we do find that the policies of the right and left do meet when you get right down to the nitty-gritty of it all. It's just a bit of a disagreement as to who is going to be controlling, or whether it's going to be the long-established private interests or the up-and-coming Nazi, communist, whatever interests of the people who've come from the lower and upper middle classes. So you've still got your aristocracy and your upper middle, lower middle class mentality fighting for power at the top. One's got a sort of Stalinist type communist dream of, either way, they both amount more or less to factory prisons for the majority, and people living on a ration type existence. So it doesn't really matter which one gets in power. Though probably more people will fare slightly better under the Fabian system, possibly. Who knows? So, and also then people say, well, who do you support then? So obviously, as I've said before, I do support the Ubuntu party. And, Ubuntu UK have set up their own political party, supported by Michael Tellinger, who set up Ubuntu South Africa Liberation Movement. And I'll talk about that in a bit, though I have explained Ubuntu in previous videos, and again I'll leave you the link, you can check it out for yourself. So Ubuntu UK was saying, in 2015, will you vote for us? And I said no. And like quite shocked. Why won't you vote for us? And so I explained that I am not prepared to vote for anybody who demands that I must first declare myself mentally incompetent. So, I've shared Peter England's video before, Never Place Across X on a ballot paper, and he explains in no uncertain terms that when you place that X on the ballot paper, you are declaring yourself mentally incompetent. Legally, that is what you are doing. And you are saying, I am mentally incompetent, but this person is going to be my representative and is going to think for me. And that person never has to consult you personally about any decisions they make on your behalf, because you are classed as mentally incompetent. And the only time that person that you voted for will ever even speak in Parliament on your behalf is if 3,000 of you mentally incompetent have written to them about one specific issue. Okay, then they are legally required to mention it in Parliament, to ask a question. Otherwise, they don't have to take any notice of you. And, obviously it's decided that 3,000 mentally incompetents mean perhaps something should be said. That's it. Okay. And so, I suggested to Ubuntu UK that for the next election we set up alternative ballot polling stations where people can bring their full poll card signed and leave it with Ubuntu UK, and then they can and then if Ubuntu UK ends up with more ballot papers, then obviously they will have won the election and no authority could actually dispute it, because we won't have a pile of papers with X's on it. We will have people's actual signed poll cards. And also those people have not declared themselves mentally incompetent in order to vote for us. And that means that when an Ubuntu representative stands up for people, they will actually listen to people, because that's what a leader's job. That's what leaders are supposed to do. They're supposed to be the common denominator in making sure everybody's needs, from the first to the last, are adequately addressed, and that we don't favour one group of people above another group of people. And especially we look at what the impact is going to be on the majority. So when you're looking at privatising a national rail service to earn money for foreign corporations, instantly you realise that the public are going to be losing out. And we are, we're paying both ways. We're paying $4 billion a year in subsidies to privatised rail, and we're paying massively high rail fares, to the extent a lot of people can't even afford to use the trains. The trains are virtually empty, apart from the rush hour periods that people have to go to work. So, I'm not prepared to declare myself mentally incompetent. And, we do need to face reality, because that is what we are being asked to do legally. Peter of England explains it. I'll leave the video. He explains it fully. We are declaring ourselves mentally incompetent when we place that X to vote for somebody in the present system. And apparently Jeremy Corbyn wants to attack austerity, and he thinks this can be done by taxing rich people more. Again, it just isn't going to work. The rich people can always find ways of hiding their money and hiding how much they're making, so we know it isn't going to work, taxing the rich people. And at the end of the day, where are the rich people getting the money from? For us to tax, or can we even see it? We know they've all got offshore accounts. that they can, and they find ways so that they're not actually based in Britain. You know, even though they're operating in Britain, but they don't pay Britain barely any tax. Like all those coffee shops, you know, Costa Coffee, they're not paying barely any tax, if any at all. So how is that going to work? It isn't going to work. And so my problem is, as I say, I refuse. I've stepped out of the box, and a lot of people really dislike me for that. You know, it's like I don't seem to fit in with anybody, really, because they're all still in these boxes, and they want me to operate in these boxes, and I'm saying, well, I'm sorry, I'm alive at the moment. I'll go in a box when I'm dead. And at the moment, I don't like these boxes. I don't trust them. They're mislabeled. They're misleading, and actually, we're just putting ourselves on a conveyor belt towards serving this digitalised, updated, antiquated consciousness that is governing us, and it's been governing us for too long. And we know that this consciousness, this is its foundation. This is the foundation of our whole economic system and social system right now that we are living in. And it is slavery. That is what they did. We could go right back to Jesus' time. We could go right back to the Roman Empire when it first invaded Britain. It's that consciousness of where a group of people think they've got rights to go and invade other lands, steal off the people and enslave the people and tell them they're all inferior, and we as the invading forces are all superior, you see. And there's some idea that somehow God has given them the right to do that as well. So we know that this is the foundation of our present society, that everything we have, the fact you can go to the shop and pick a jar of coffee up from the shelf and a bag of sugar, is because these people were packed like sardines into these boats and transported from their homelands against their will and sold as slaves. And any who got ill or died, well, they just got thrown aboard. That is the consciousness. Now, whether it's a right wing or a left wing consciousness controlling that ship of people packed in like sardines, it doesn't matter. That's the result. Slavery. You see, and I'm not going to be enslaved to anybody. Okay? I am a slave to this world in as much I have to live in it and tolerate the ridiculousness of it all just to live in it, you know. But consciously I'm not a slave. Consciously I am aware, and consciously I'm facing reality, and the reality is I am being asked to declare myself mentally incompetent to vote for Jeremy Corbyn, and he's got nothing at all to say about that, because that's going way too far out of the box, my dear. What we need to focus on is Trident, you know. Let's get onto the agendas here. Well, no, you know, I don't want Trident. I don't want to talk about Trident. I don't want to talk about education policy in your boxes of what the policy is, because actually your whole education system is corrupt, it's damaging children, and it's absolutely completely useless, and it's churning out people that don't even know the needs of a 2-year-old human child, right? So do not talk to me about education policy, because you're talking about an education policy for a system that has failed. It's failed. We're living in a country where the UN has to come and tell us that basically there's a child abuse crisis going on in Britain. And again, you know, Jeremy Corbyn has said absolutely nothing at all about what's happening with the family courts. That's oh, don't want to get in there yet. It's a bit of an explosive thing. Yeah, we're just going to stick with the family Labour stall that we've put out on the street with our trident and defence, you know. I mean, look, it's just like your defence, you know, economy and taxation, education. You know, it reads like a blooming BBC weekly news coverage. Europe, housing, you know. Rent controls in places like London would be introduced. I mean, none of these things are really addressing the problem. It's like putting a sticky plaster on a gaping wound and going, there, love, you'll feel better now. Just vote for us and we'll be able to actually provide you with the bandage. You know, we don't want that. And I'm loath to give David Cameron another 5 years, you see, and this is the other thing that disturbs me, is that because people put so much hope into Jeremy Corbyn, and it means that they're all prepared then to wait that next 5 years. He's the carrot dangling on the stick. Well, it's like, well, what is he actually offering me? Because actually I need more than a carrot. What is he offering to me and to the British people and to our children? You know, and I did write to Jeremy Corbyn and I asked him, because, you know, I know he is a man of conscience, and I asked him to consider moving towards Ubuntu policies. And, you know, as I say, this is Ubuntu. I'll leave you the video and both links to listen to Michael telling you, and I'll just play you a few minutes of his video.
Hello, my name is Michael Tillinger, and I'm the founder of the newly formed Ubuntu Liberation Movement and political party in South Africa. This movement arose in 2005 out of my original philosophy on a whole new social structure that I called at the time contributionism, only to realize that virtually all ancient cultures have had similar systems that have been suppressed and lost to us all through capitalism, industrialization, modernization, and ultimately the greed of a handful of humans that want to rule the world. I would like to share with you the joy and simplicity and the beauty of Ubuntu, where people do not live divided in fear of each other, but rather live united and thrive in abundance on all levels of our society. All my life I've been appalled by the human suffering and misery that prevails on our beautiful planet. Suffering that seems to continue as if there were no solutions to the plight of humanity. And yet, in all our hearts, we all know that there are solutions, and that they are really simple. But somehow, our so-called leaders are not providing the solutions, but instead creating more confusion and misery. I remember as a young child being deeply affected by the suffering around me, wondering why there are poor people and rich people, why some people are homeless and hungry while others live it up in luxury. Well, that feeling has never left me personally, and I know that there are millions around the world who feel the same. In 2005, I had what could be described as an awakening experience. Like millions of people around the world, I began to realize that there had to be something more to this life than the strife and misery that most people experience on a daily basis. I began to look around for the reasons of the human misery and suffering, trying to find a simple solution to it all. It became very clear to me that humanity has become a deeply divided species, divided on every possible level we can imagine. divided by country, by flag, by religion, education, where we live, what job we have, what car we drive, what clothes we wear, the brands we buy. The division is endless and far more severe than most of us could possibly realize. And most importantly, in our relentless quest for modernization, many of us have become separated from Mother Earth. It becomes obvious to me that this human division is in direct conflict with the laws of nature and the resonance of unity consciousness that seems to be the foundation for all of creation. Our division.
So there you go, unity consciousness, the creative the foundation. So, and this is what Michael telling you, and I do advise you to watch this whole video. And while I'm here, I'll subscribe to him, though I am already a member of the Ubuntu associations. So what Michael Tellinger is explaining here is that we are moving towards a new consciousness now. You know, we are evolving, and this antiquated clockwork system that I've described has to go, because, you know, we've grown out of it. We've grown out of that now. Our consciousness has evolved, and it's evolved because we've been learning as a species on this planet, in this universe, and we've learned about our light being body. And I have made other videos in which I've shared my experience in which I witnessed a light being. I had what many would describe as a close encounter, and it was a very close encounter because I was physically affected by it as well, and also emotionally and psychologically, and it did stir up a lot of thoughts that were buried within my own consciousness that then all sort of battled with each other, basically to control me. That's what the thoughts were doing. They were controlling me in ways that I didn't even know, because I believed things, even without knowing, things that had been told to me from my being a child. And so, you know, we are evolving, and a lot of us, there's not just me, there's thousands of people, if not millions, who've been through this. They've fought the battles within themselves. They fought the battles within their families and friends and communities. They fought, and then they go on to fight the bigger battles. And at the moment, myself as a Mackenzie Angel is involved in fighting for children's rights and the implementation of EU child protection directives for every child in Britain, if not the entire world, the entire planet, you know. And this is what we're getting at. We're moving forward to a new way of being, where we live, we realise that we do need to live by an age of contributionism, and that the idea is to have fair and just laws that are there to protect people rather than oppress and rob people, and also a society that genuinely cares, a compassionate way of life. So the technology we employ is the technology that is most beneficial to both humanity and our environment. You know, I mean, they say solar panels are too expensive to produce, except, you know, a laptop computer, which is very high tech, you know, you can buy for a couple of £100. So why is a solar panel more difficult and more expensive to make than a complicated laptop? You see, none of their reasons make sense, and we can see that they use money in order to keep any alternatives that don't keep the original machinery going. Anything that does not support that is shelved or buried. I mean, we all know what happened to Tesla, don't we? Because his power system would have provided more or less free energy for everybody. Oh, we couldn't have that, could we? You know. And it was the same with hemp. Hemp could have made everybody, given everybody a much more comfortable existence and a much more eco-friendly existence. But it's like, oh no, that's going to cut in on the profits that the oil men are going to make off their oil waste. And if they can't make plastics out of their oil waste, then that means that they've got to do something with it because it's extremely toxic and environmentally damaging. So, let's make plastic out of it and sell it to people. And then along comes hemp, where you can make biodegradable plastics, and then suddenly, oh no, they're going to cut into our profits. I mean, there still would have been room for oil-produced plastic, but it's like, no, they couldn't even give that little bit. And that's the problem with them, is that they cannot give that little bit. And then you've got the people like the Labour Party, the left, in every nation. You know, there's a right and left, isn't there? That, again, like I say, it's the system. And what they fight for is the little bit. But actually, by right, we have a right to all of it. Not just a little bit of our rights. We have a right to all of our rights. And in my last video, you know, I talk about G4S and as a person, because that's legally what they've decided a corporation is, a person. And as I'm saying, you know, it's about time. Why isn't Jeremy Corbyn, for example, addressing the impact of G4S as a person on British children? You know, because G4S is a child abuser. Now, Jeremy Corbyn stayed out of that issue of the child abuse in Britain, you know, and people have written to him about the abomination of justice that was actually delivered to children in March 2015 by the British High Court, and it did deliver an abomination of justice according to EU child protection directives. It was an abomination of the justice those directives seek to provide. That's a very serious issue. That's a very serious issue. If somebody had been tried for murder and all the evidence was there to prove that person was a murderer, to give you every reason to suspect that person and other people were involved in a murder, and they just get all the protocols for investigating and arresting and bringing charges against a murderer and bringing evidence to the court, all those protocols are ignored, and the murderer is now allowed to walk free because the judge has said so, even though the judge themselves has not even followed any of the normal legal processes and procedures that any reasonable human being would employ toward investigating a case and presenting evidence to a court, enough for them to say this person is completely innocent. That did not happen for 2 children, and not just 2 children, the hundreds if not thousands of trafficked babies, and the other 20 children, or well, they said 200 from other schools as well were involved. So, you know, hundreds of children you've got at risk, and they don't even get your basic justice. And yet a court with very, very little evidence, in fact, barely a shred of evidence other than one suspect's word. This person's innocent. You know, and I am deeply disturbed and upset that our leaders have said absolutely nothing at all about that. They've got nothing to say that the British High Court has delivered an abomination of justice to children. That's treason. It's treason. They've left hundreds, thousands of children at risk with their illegal judgment and their negligence in addressing crimes against children. You know, and in my other videos, you know, I go through all the problems that the children are suffering. You know, children are suffering at home. They're suffering in care. You know, where is a safe place for children? Have we got any safe places? Because at the moment, the way things stand, once a child's gone into care, they've got no chance really of getting anything done if they suffer any abuse. As my recent videos show, you know, and my message to Cameron, I know I'm getting really upset in that, but who could not be? Who couldn't be upset? You know, I was upset. I still made the video. I haven't gone and bombed anybody or committed any vile acts of terrorism against anybody. And this is what I mean about people. You know, we need to get emotional. We need to feel something in our hearts, because that's what the new consciousness is all about. It's about connecting with what we know, what we feel, where our heart is. And a lot of us have been very seriously misguided into thinking that the age-old institutions are going to somehow straighten out and sort everything out. Well, they're not. They're not going to do it. We have to do it. We have to tell Jeremy Corbyn where we want to go, because this is the 21st century. We're not post-war Britain now. We're right in the middle of war, really. And now we're in a war of economic terrorism. Now, and that's the other thing that disturbs me. He's never said those words, economic terrorism. None of them have said it. And yet David Cameron stood up and he's talking about, seriously talking about, giving new powers to police and the courts against non-violent terrorists. Well, what about the economic terrorists that have killed thousands of British people? And, you know, there was talk about the 10,000 deaths through the austerity cuts against benefits. Nobody's talked about the thousands upon thousands upon thousands of suicides that have happened to people since then who weren't on benefits but who've lost their jobs, or who are struggling so hard in their jobs that it's driven them to suicide. You know, nurses have been committing suicide because they can't deliver the care that the patients need, and they're on the front lines. You know, and it's no wonder the doctors have gone on strike, because at the end of the day, if they don't go on strike, there's probably more people going to die and suffer than if they do. And when it comes to that situation, any NHS, all NH staff really need to walk out. They won't, because they care. You know, they know the patients still need them, and so a lot of them won't do it. But unfortunately, it's like, unless people are prepared to stand up and say, look, I'm sorry, we've had enough and we do need a new system. I mean, the way my idea is basically to just to start with, just print money. Everybody believes in it. You know, if you give somebody a £5 note, they're not going to say, oh, you haven't got enough gold to print all that £5. What's it based on? Nobody's asking any questions about it at all. Just give them the £5 notes. Give them the money. Print it on the strength of hemp or silver. You know, give people the money and guide them to spend it wisely, so communities have enough money to have their own little pots, to have their own power supplies, their own eco power supplies. Give communities money to set up their own schools, or to be influencing their schools. Change the schools. Change the curriculums. Let's get with it. You know, these children, they're being born into the space age. This is the space age. If you go to the average school, you wouldn't know it, because they're actually all still stuck in an essentially Victorian approach to teaching children. And it's all about measuring them. Measure, measure. What are your numbers? How do your numbers add up as you grow up? Oh, no. What is in you as a child, as a person, as a human being? What can we build on? What can we develop? Oh, so you're dyslexic and you don't read very well, all right. And actually you're not interested in that. What are you interested in? What is this child interested in? What can we teach these children? What interest can we instill them with? Well, not instill. That is the wrong word, because that's what the education's doing now. Enthuse. This enthusiasm, this delight that every child should feel on going to school to learn about wonderful things and to learn how wonderful things are, and at the same time be learning to write and add up and do all the other things as a side issue. What's important is, what are you learning? How are you developing? Not according to how many questions you get right, or whether or not you've dotted all the I's and crossed all the T's. You know, and unfortunately, it's that type of mentality that have crossed all the I's and dotted all the T's who are move on to become MPs, and that's the mentality that Jeremy Corbyn comes from. And even though no matter what he says about, oh, I want to change this, I want to change that, he's never going to change anything in Parliament as it stands now. You know, and I'm not saying demolish Parliament, I'm saying fill it with a new consciousness and a new way forward. And I'm saying that to the Fabian Society as well. I know they've got this thing of wolf in sheep's clothing, but again, the Fabians of today, they're not the people that set it up. The same as the Labour Party members of today are not the people that set the Labour Party up. And the same goes for Parliament. We have to leave these dead consciousnesses. No matter what society we're in, we can turn them around to serve more reasonable and realistic ideas. You know, this is what has happened to Britain. It's happened in every country. We have to stand up against it, Jeremy Corbyn. So if you're going to come along and you expect us all to swallow what's happening right now, and, you know, as I say, to put up with an abomination, a treasonous court judgment, a treasonous high court judgment on behalf of children, and you expect us to just let that go and all of us think about Trident and think, oh, if Jeremy Corbyn gets in, he's going to do a new policy on Trident. And if Jeremy Corbyn he's going to do something about defence, and he's going to do something about economy and taxation. He's going to end austerity by introducing higher taxes for the rich. And, a crackdown on tax avoidance. It is not going to happen. It's not going to change a bloody thing. Because it's the banks that are controlling. We're still going to be in debt to the banks. He's not questioning the legality of the debt itself. Because, you know, it's one thing for how many generations to be brought up paying the debts of 2 world wars to a set of criminal bankers that we now found out instigated and profited off the wars in the first place. Okay, we've only just finished paying them, and in fact we haven't even finished on one debt. And now they think that they can dump an illegal criminal debt from criminal bankers' activities on the next generation. And they're going to pay that forever, because it is actually unrepayable. So that is debt forever. And we are, in our life, our lifeline of everybody alive today, we are the dividing line between the next generation taking on that debt, or the next generation moving into a whole new consciousness. Which is it going to be? Because I, for one, am not going to support any politician that does not stand outright and say, I want these bankers arrested and I want this debt removed, because it's been created by criminals and is the result of fraud and theft, drugs laundering, drugs, illegal drugs and money, and child abuse. Now, if a politician is not prepared to say that, I am not going to vote for them. Okay? And I don't care about, but if you don't vote for him, then the Tories will get in. The Tories will only get in because you people vote on those. You put your little X's in the box and declare yourself mentally incompetent. And while ever you're declaring yourself mentally incompetent, Parliament is what you are going to get. This is what you're going to get. The old clockwork system. And again, all these people that work in these institutions, I am not blaming or accusing them personally of anything, because I know, again, I understand how people are led into these things, they believe in them. The ones that are profiting most off them, of course, they believe in them most and serve them most. But at the end of the day, they have to accept it's an antiquated consciousness. It's time to move out. Put new people in the buildings. Fill the buildings with a new way forward, a new consciousness. We don't want any heavy-handed austerity approach or anything to pay debts off, because the debts are illegal. So, and that is a fact. They are illegal. We want living standards raised for the poorest people, and we want living standards secured for the people who are living a fairly comfortable existence. And the people who are living beyond a reasonably comfortable existence, and I'm not talking living just above the poverty line, but people who are living excessively luxuriously wealthy lives, they are criminals to live like that, when they know that people are working and struggling and can barely keep a roof over their heads or feed their children properly, when they know that children are being abused by people in power, when they know that the system is corrupt. The fact is, the more money you have in this world, and the more of a social status, the more responsibility you bear as an individual, the more responsible you are, because you've got the power to change things and to think where you're going to invest your money, And this idea, we don't want sudden attacks of guilt where people just go suddenly throwing the money at a load of poor people who will then just go and spend it on all the things that the system's conditioned them to desire and want. What we need to do is spend our money wisely so that people have a better quality of life, so that parents can take the children to leisure activities without having to pay extortionate amounts of money. Let's create a world that humans can live freely in, and with respect and dignity. People work. If you took away everybody's jobs tomorrow, if there was no jobs at all, you'd still see people working. People would be working. I see people all the time doing work that they don't get paid for. I do it myself. I work every single day. Okay? I don't get paid. I get paid a very small amount for the carers' work that I do. That's it. Nothing else. I don't earn any money, but I work all the time. And so do a lot of people that I know. They work, they do things, they help their neighbours, they help their local communities, and people go home, they make their own things. And so this idea that we have to depend on this system to keep everything going. It's like an old clangy clock that we've kept on the mantelpiece, and it's been there so long, and we think, oh, it's dinging, this has got to happen. Oh, the clock stopped ticking. Oh, let's wind it up again, get it ticking again. No. The clock stopped ticking. It stopped ticking when the banks crashed. It stopped ticking on 9/11 and 7/7. It stopped ticking. Let's not wind it up again. It's an old clock. Actually, we don't need to live by a clock, do we? We don't need to live by that clock anymore. What we need to live by is a fluid river system, not a clockwork system. Life doesn't survive on clockwork. That's for robots. Okay, if you want a robot to do monotonous, boring tasks, brilliant, because, human lives, we're a drudge doing them. So yeah, if we can have a robot to do boring human tasks that people should not be doing, to give those people a chance to make the world a happier, brighter place, let's do that. Let's have robots to do those jobs. But not let's have robots to replace human beings, so human beings go hungry and have no home because a robot's took their job. And this is where, you see, I don't fit in the boxes. And it's because this antiquated system believes that if you just allow people to live freely and comfortably, there's going to be a huge population explosion. Well, that ain't true. And we know for a fact it isn't true. It is not true. When you give people a comfortable life, especially women, the rights, well, populations start to fall. Birth rates drop. Populations stabilise. Because people have got other things to live for and do, other than procreating the next generation. And women have a choice and legal rights to say, no, sorry, I don't want to get pregnant. So, it is time for us to ask questions and also to think about reality. Forget about what the media says, what the BBC and this media thing against Corbyn. Oh, media's attacking Corbyn. Corbyn must be all right then. Forget it. And you too, Corbyn. This 5 years, why should we wait 5 years under this criminal government? And they are criminals. Because, again, the government has said nothing at all about the abomination of justice. And we have written to everybody. The Mackenzie Angels have contacted everybody in authority. There's not one child protection authority that we have not contacted about this abomination of justice. We've contacted the Ministry of Justice, the Home Office, the Children's Commissioner, but nobody's got anything at all to say about it. And this horror that's happening of children just being taken from their parents to be handed over to abusive authorities, and we know they're abusive, we know they're abusing children, they're killing children, and nobody's got a thing to say about it. But oh my gosh, your child bangs its ear twice and you're going to get into serious trouble. Your kid's going to be taken off you and handed over to people. Well, basically, they're being put at risk. And Jeremy Corbyn has got nothing to say about it. Nothing. So, I'm sorry, friends. I'm sorry, family and people who all think I'm being a very bad person by not towing the line and supporting Labour because it's a way of getting in. It's our only hope. No, it isn't our only hope. My hope is standing outside Parliament until we get child protection rights and just stand there and not move. That's my way, because I know that unless we can stand up for the children's rights, then we're never going to get our own rights. And it is true, you know, and it's like all the people who were saying, going on about, yeah, let's get rid of the scroungers, and now they've lost the businesses, and now they're losing the jobs, because, you know, the scroungers, money's been taken. And now the people who were working on reasonable, proper, decent contracts, government contracts, have all been made to sign these 0-hour contracts, and they've all bloody signed them, like quick as a flash, because they daren't not sign them, because they know that there's no benefits there for them. If they do, they're going to be if they don't sign that 0-hour contract, then basically they're looking at working for £70 a week, training how to stack boxes on shelves in pound stretcher. So you can see, this is like coercion. It's evil, and it is economic terrorism. And I want to hear somebody say it, because if I can be accused of being a non-violent terrorist for pointing out the facts of 9/11, right? Well, don't you tell me, after what they've done they've killed people. They're killing people. They're making children suffer poverty. Serious poverty. Millions of children in Britain have been dumped in overnight into absolute serious poverty, or taken off their parents who genuinely love them. Because there's people and they're making money. The only way to make money now is out of providing social services for private corporations that are making money out of stealing children and then abusing those children. And then Jeremy Corbyn's got nothing to say about it, and people are moaning at me and upset with me because I'm not supporting him 100%, and I'm questioning. I've called him Mr. Wishy-Washy, you know, and I don't say it to insult him personally. Like I say, as the Labour leader, as a leader of a party, he's Mr. Wishy-Washy to me. So, you know, I don't want him to be Mr. Wishy-Washy. And, you know, if there's any hope that he is only like that because he's that in the boxes, I hope that, you know, myself and other people can appeal to him to step out of that box. Because we've all got to help each other, you know. And even the people, you know, I've criticised G4S. I'll say here and now, I have got friends who work in G4S, and I know they do as much best job as they can, and I know that they struggle. They do struggle. They're under resourced, understaffed, ill-trained. You know, it's like that man in my previous video, G4S. He ended up, a child died at his hands, and I was very angry about it. You know. And I am angry about it because he was in there harassing that little boy. But at the same time, you know, I still wouldn't be cruel to him or judge him as I would a murderer, because he wasn't properly trained. He wasn't the right man for the job, because if he had been, a child wouldn't have died just by him restraining them. He wasn't trained. And so it's the corporation that are really responsible, and because that man wasn't properly trained, so therefore he was asked to do a job in which he ran the risk of becoming criminally negligent, and now he's got to live with that on his conscience, what happened. And it is wrong that he was promoted to health and safety manager. But these are the things that are happening, and that's why it's so serious that children have child protection directives. And that's why it's so serious when the British High Court, the Royal Courts of Justice, turn round and deliver an abomination of EU child protection directives as justice, inverted commas, for British children or any child entering Britain. That's treason. And I expect any leader of any party to stand up and say something about that. And I expect them to talk about economic terrorism to an opposition that is talking about non-violent terrorism from law-abiding members of the British public. So, you know what? When I say this about Trident, it does make me see red. It just makes me want to vomit. Okay, so that's where I'm at. And like I say, you know, I know I've criticised all of the governments. In fact, there's nobody really that gets gets away, because, like I say, you're all part of this antiquated system. We have to step out of it. It's time to step out of it and be human beings, brothers and sisters, care about each other, try to help each other, even the ones of us that have done wrong, give an amnesty. You know, the people that are a danger, yes, they need to be incarcerated. Help as much as we can, but let's remove these divisions and barriers, as Ubuntu, Michael Tellinger, talks about. You know, it's time to take hold of the children's hand. Hold the children's hand. Let's give them a world, a life, a future that's going to be worth living. Because seriously, this old system, I'm sorry, old mantelpiece clock, you know, you're from an old time, an ancient place. Things have moved on, and we've got serious problems. Our planet is in severe distress, and Britain is responsible for that as one of the major colonialists. You know, wreaked havoc on every nation, infected every nation with their antiquated and corrupted approaches to life and their political and financial systems and laws. We have to now help each other, help everybody, and make the world a better place. And instead of, you know, standing up in Parliament and say, I support Israel's right to defend itself, stand up in Parliament and say, I support Israel's right to be a friend to Palestine, and I support Palestine's right to be a friend to Israel, and I support those people, and I want to do everything I can to help those people now make the best of a bad situation, because no matter what we do, you know, we can't stop ripping people out and saying, well, you can't live here anymore. We cannot do that again. We can't go back. We can't go back. So we have to make the best of what we've got now and accept it. Doesn't matter if you're Israel, Palestine, what your religion is. You're a human being living in a particular part of planet Earth, and what can we do to make all your lives as good and wonderful as this should be? Because we're living on a wonderful planet in a wonderful universe, and it is time we all noticed the real stars. Thank you, and thank you for listening and sending love to all, and to the Labour Party, the Fabians, and Jeremy Corbyn, and even to the Tories, if they can get the gist of this message and if they can step out of the boxes too. Love to everybody.